You have all different kinds. You have some that are called wisdom psalms or Torah psalms. You got praise. You've got a lot of lament, which is worth thinking about for a minute. So can any of you think of some lament hymns that we sing regularly in church? I'll wait. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm racking my brain here. Laments, hymns that we sing in church. Let's see. Anyone? Anyone? Going once? Going twice? So if you think of the book of Psalms as the Old Testament hymnal, all right? 150 hymns. Any guesses percentage-wise about how many of these would be categorized as lament hymns? Just throw a number out there. Third? Don't let Ken have the only guess here.
Only lament or
Any elements of lament. Yeah, not just lament, but any element of lament in them. You have a guess? Give me a number.
75.
75. All right, that's good. It's like it's Price is Right going on here. We got a third. We got 75. Anybody? Well, so numbers, of course, depending on who you ask, but a standard answer, and I think this is pretty accurate based upon what I've done, is 40%. 40%. Now just think about that for a minute. In the divinely inspired, God-given hymn book of the Israelites, about 40%, and even if you want to argue about some of these, well, okay, reduce it to 30, okay. You know what? Reduce it to 10%. Let's just go there. Let's say that, there's some scholar out there that says, no, actually there's only 10% of the Psalms of the Lament. All right, I'll go with that. Show me any hymnal that's in existence in Christianity today that has 10% of the hymns that are lament. They don't exist. Now that ought to give us pause and make us think, maybe we're missing something. Maybe we're missing actually something that God knows we need. Maybe we're missing the fact that we are designed, when suffering, to lament. I think there's no other conclusion that we can come to. If these are the very hymns that God gave us to sing, and God divinely inspired there to be, pick your number, 10%, 40%, 75%, say around half, are lament in nature, well then why aren't we lamenting when we sing today? I would say that when we are going through a hard time, whether it's loneliness or whether it's sickness or whether it's relationship disasters or grief, whatever it is you're going through, you're already lamenting on the inside. Maybe you're not giving words to that lament, but that's what's going on. You're crying out on the inside. Don't we even use that language sometimes? Just like inside, I'm just crying out. Well, you can do that, but you can also, cry out vocally, orally, prayerfully, by using the very words that are in the Psalms to do that. And in this way, you learn the language that God himself has given you to speak to him during those times. So lament, I think, is one of the greatest treasures of spiritual care that is virtually neglected in today's spirituality in our life as Christians. Anyone remember that movie Apostle from a few years back? I always forget the actor's name. Anyone help me? Robert Duvall. How many of you have seen The Apostle? Okay, if you haven't, just go to YouTube. Not now. Okay, put your phones down. But go to YouTube sometime and type in the movie's name, The Apostle, and something like scene where Robert De Niro argues with God. It's an incredible scene. He's upstairs in his room, and he's pacing around, and he's just yelling at God. He's just yelling at God, and he's talking to him as a father. He's upset as a child of God, and he's talking to him with this brutal honesty about what he's going through, about the pain, the confusion. Where are you, God? And it turns out the reason I love that scene is because that is like right from the Psalms. That whole attitude of being honest with God. Have you forgotten to be gracious? That's in the Psalms. Has God in his anger withdrawn his compassion? He's forgotten to be gracious? Is this what's going on, God? Or there's another one. You've heard this one before. My God, why have you forsaken me? You ever think about the fact that on the cross, Jesus laments? That's exactly what that is. Psalm 22 is a lament psalm. My God, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? Far from my deliverance are the words of my groaning. Oh my God, I cry by day, but thou dost not answer, and by night, but I have no rest. Where are you? Why are you so far from me? David prayed that. David wrote that. Jesus prayed that. It's a lament. It's a lament psalm. So let me encourage you. When you are, especially when you're going through those tough times in life, to open up the Psalms and to begin to pray those words. Because you'll find, at first they make you uncomfortable. But the more you pray them, the more they won't seem like somebody else's prayer. Actually, the more it'll seem like they were the prayer that you needed, even though you didn't know that you needed it. And they will feel like they're exactly what you needed to express to God. If you want one in particular, if you're in that spot now, then Psalm 13 is the psalm for you. Maybe we'll look at that in a few minutes. But there's a lot of psalms. Lament is just one of those. Wisdom psalms, praise psalms, history psalms like 105, 106, which recount the history of Israel. Now let me just dispel something right away that maybe some of you are thinking. Maybe some of you are thinking this. Oh, Chad, that's just Old Testament stuff. That's just for those Israelites. We're New Testament Christians, right? No, we're not New Testament Christians. We're Christians. And by Christians, we mean those who embrace the entirety of the Scriptures, Old and New Testament. Did you realize that, there's a book that Jesus never read? You know what it is? The New Testament. Jesus never read a single word of the New Testament because, of course, it didn't exist. In fact, his earliest followers didn't read the New Testament either because it didn't exist. It took time for Paul to write his letters, and Peter and John, and for Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John to write their Gospels, and for John to have the Revelation. This took time, right? And then they had to be all put together into one collection of books we call the New Testament. But Jesus and his earliest followers never read that. Their Bible was, we call it the Old Testament. You know what they called it? The Scriptures. That was it. Or the law and the prophets, or the law of the prophets and the writings. This was their Bible. And their Bible, at the center of that, was the Psalms. In fact, if you turn to Paul's epistles, Ephesians and Colossians, he actually refers to the Psalms. Paul tells these congregations to speak to one another in what? Psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs.